I'm doing is legal. This is why I believe I'll receive justice in the higher court.
Gets to hit more to right and right center than the left. Oh, it is good! He did it! He did it!
It doesn't matter what your background is and where you come from. If you have dreams and you have goals, and that's all that really matters.
But there's only one Usain Bolt.
I owe, a lot to Charlie.
A freedom of expression that the entire world could see.
When you black, it's not a movement, it's a lifestyle. This is who we are.
Sport is a powerful institution, and one that has impacted society in a number of ways. Historically, however, it's been at its most dynamic in tackling issues of social integration and inclusion. In America, the land of the free, the struggle has been ongoing. From Jackie Robinson, the man who broke down racial barriers and integrated baseball forever in 1947, to heavyweight champion Muhammad Ali, who joined forces with civil rights movement leader Martin Luther King Jr. in 1967.
What did you discuss back in the hotel room?
Nothing, just friends, just like Khrushchev and Kennedy and everybody. When all of the politicians of all other white races come together, and although they believe different, they think different, whites can come together and discuss the common cause. But whenever a few of us come together, the world is shook up. And I say, whatever went back there is our business.
Reverend King, do you agree?
Oh, yes. We had a very good discussion on many matters. And of course, these are not things that we would discuss here, but we do have common problems and common concerns. And above all, as Muhammad Ali has just said, we are all victims of the same system of oppression. And even though we may have different religious beliefs, this does not at all bring about a difference in terms of our concern.
In his famous I Have a Dream speech, Martin Luther King reminded America that black people could never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. But in order to overcome such atrocities, his movement required strong leaders who would follow his example and help build solidarity using the platform of sport. Boxing's Ali, the NFL's Jim Brown, and the NBA's Bill Russell and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar all fought alongside Martin Luther King for the future of civil rights, racial justice, and the fight against oppression. The same kind of oppression that was there during the 5-day Newark race riots of 1967. And the same kind of oppression that was there again during the 1992 Los Angeles riots, after the arrest and beating of Rodney King. But in 2012, it was the oppression suffered by 17-year-old Trayvon Martin, a black teenager shot by a community watch volunteer, carrying little more than a bag of candy and no weapon of any kind. When Martin's assailant was acquitted, the Black Lives Matter movement was born. It started as a simple social media hashtag, But across the course of a decade, the decentralized group garnered the attention of thousands of sportsmen, women, and organizations willing to use their public profile to support the fight against police brutality on Black Americans. During preparations for the NFL 2016 season, San Francisco 49er Colin Kaepernick began taking a knee instead of standing for the national anthem during preseason matches. It would be a stance he'd take for the remainder of the year, making headlines worldwide and dividing a nation.
You know, I think people are realizing the injustices and the oppression that's taking place in this country, and it's something that needs to be addressed. I think it can have a huge impact on a lot of people's lives, and that's ultimately what the goal is, to affect this country and those people positively.
Kaepernick's protests recall the rebellious spirit of those 1960 sporting icons, but as a sole crusader, he became a problem and a target for the NFL, and was later sent into football exile. It wasn't until 2020, with the police death of unarmed Minneapolis man George Floyd, that the Black Lives Matter movement hit a tipping point. The groundswell of support became so strong that the sporting protests reached far and wide across the globe. Most leagues, athletes, coaches, managers, and leading athletic apparel brands all wanted change, with some conceding a lack of urgency on their behalf, but now demanding the abolishment of systematic racism. With 70% of the NFL made up of Black players, that organization had come to the realization that more needed to be said than done. And while the NFL's next step remained unanswered, the return of a certain quarterback was at the forefront of most people's minds. It took just 3.5 months after the 2020 death of George Floyd for another Black American to fall victim to police brutality. On August 23, 2020, Jacob Blake, a 29-year-old man from Wisconsin, was left partially paralyzed after he was shot 7 times in the back by police. The sports world responded swiftly once again, with the NBA's Milwaukee Bucks responding immediately. After the team watched a video of the incident that occurred just 40 minutes from their home court, gone were the symbolic gestures. This time, the players took unprecedented action by boycotting Game 5 of its playoff series against the Orlando Magic.
The last few days in our home state of Wisconsin, we've seen the horrendous video of Jacob Blake being shot in the back 7 times by a police officer in Kenosha, and the additional shooting of protesters. Despite the overwhelming plea for change, there has been no action, so our focus today cannot be on basketball.
And the Bucks didn't stop there, calling directly on the Wisconsin state legislature for more action and greater justice before the upcoming U.S. presidential election.
We are calling for justice for Jacob Blake and demand the officers be held accountable. For this to occur, it is imperative for the Wisconsin state legislature to reconvene after months of inaction and take up meaningful measures to address issues of police accountability, brutality, and criminal justice reform. We encourage all citizens to educate themselves, take peaceful and responsible action, and remember to vote on November 3rd. on behalf of the Milwaukee Bucks. Thank you.
You guys have to finish the season.
When 46 out of the 100 largest cities had adopted use of force rule changes for police by mid-2021, it was national reform legislation that had stalled. It was left to the NBA, its players' union, and the WNBA Players' Union to once again make a stand and publicly challenge Congress on Memorial Day, also the first anniversary of George Floyd's death. The NBA added Black Lives Matter signage to their courts, and the issue of police brutality and oppression against Black Americans was at the top of national discussion once more, drawing criticism from politicians, including the U.S. President Donald Trump. As the NBA set the benchmark in athletic activism, other sporting organizations with far deeper reaching roots in American racial inequality looked to join the fight. NASCAR, one of America's biggest motor racing organizations, failed to fight racism for 72 years. But after outspoken Black driver Bubba Wallace led a ban for the Confederate flag from all racetracks, NASCAR made its move. The flag is a recognized symbol of racism, and when NASCAR approved its ban, it looked to provide an inclusive environment for all fans and competitors going forward.
This is so much more than about ourselves. This is about our brothers and our sisters that are suffering through a lot. And you look at the Confederate flag and how, yes, it may mean heritage to most, but to a group that is in a lot of pain right now, the African American community is in a lot of pain, that's a symbol of hate.
The police death of George Floyd prompted a reckoning about racial injustice, and it worked hand in hand with modern technology and social media, giving the Black Lives Matter movement a civil rights platform never before seen. But like any movement that tackles oppression and systematic racism, one of the biggest challenges faced is maintaining consciousness for the cause. Just 2 weeks after helping convince NASCAR to ban the Confederate flag, Bubba Wallace had to deal with the discovery of a noose hanging from his garage door at the Alabama Speedway as light planes flew overhead, displaying the Confederate flag in defiance. And after 6 years of footballing exile, there was still no sign of the NFL returning former San Francisco 49er quarterback Colin Kaepernick to the field. Kaepernick has always wanted more than just awareness for racial injustice. He's wanted real change. It's why the Black Lives Matter movement has widened its focus from protest to action, moving away from racetracks, sporting fields and arenas, and into the boardrooms, where the true power of sport really lies.
Bruton with this electrifying pace.
Oh,
Look at that. Heaven's sakes, look at that.
Great play.
Seconds to half-time. The Wildcats letting go a point. There's the steal from Bruton. It takes Bradkey on.
American-born Australian Cal Bruton had accelerating speed, a motion-centric fluid style, and a near-limitless shooting range. In short, he had it all, except size, which could have been a disadvantage when competing in the world of the enormous. At just 5'7", Bruton always dared. He never feared, never allowed his stature to limit his efforts, and as a result, he has left one giant legacy in the world of Australian basketball.
I think Cal brought some leadership to the club that we probably were lacking in our early stages of trying to build a championship team. And he kind of took us to another level individually, because back in those days, the administration used to control a lot of what the players were doing. But when Cal came, he said, hey, I'm Cal, this is what I do, y'all can like me or hate me. And that's when I thought, hey, I like this guy.
Let's be honest about this. While Australia has produced and continues to produce the likes of Luke Longley, Andrew Bogut, Patty Mills, and Ben Simmons, the NBL in Australia is still a long ways off the standard of the NBA. The gap was even greater back in 1979. When Bruton arrived in Australia for the inaugural National Basketball League season, having come to the realization that the small-minded politics of the NBA had its limitations. Born in Queens, New York, tragedy struck young Cal at the age of 7 when his father was killed during a robbery at his workplace. Sport became his release, basketball his chance in life.
Growing up in New York City is a tough environment, and sport was a tremendous vehicle for all lower socioeconomic kids. I always looked at it that it's the equalizer, you know, it gives you a chance. I saw a lot of drugs and alcohol around my own family, so it was my thing that can just poison you and not give you any sort of chance to get to where you want to go. But for the most part, yeah, I definitely made sport my ticket. And I knew that was the only way that I would be able to escape that environment. And Rudy was the...
But Bruton had a problem, and that problem was height. Not recruited by any of the major universities, he only got to Wichita State University at the request of his best friend, star recruit Rudy Jackson, who threatened not to sign unless his point guard came along with him. Ironically, both had to meet educational qualifications to be admitted to WSU, but only Cal qualified.
The coaches were shattered, you know, because we went after this 6'9", All-American, do it all, and look what we end up with, a 5'7", you know, guy that, geez, we can get them a dime a dozen.
Bruton went on to a brilliant college career at WSU. Selected to the All-Conference team 3 years in a row, and in his final season, leading the Wheat Shockers into March Madness and the NCAA Final. But the NBA teams were not willing to gamble on his size in the 1976 draft, although the San Antonio Spurs did sign him as a free agent before releasing him just before the season. Down, but not out. Bruton got back up on his feet 10,000 miles away in Australia with the launch of his National Basketball League. Cal signed to play with the Brisbane Bullets, and finally, he was the big fish in a little pond.
Wilma Rudolph was a 100 and 200-meter world record holder and won 3 gold medals on the track at the Rome Olympics of 1960. That alone makes her one of the greats. But consider this. Born 2 months premature, Rudolph suffered double pneumonia and scarlet fever in early childhood before contracting polio at 5. She required daily massage and a leg brace until the age of 9, an orthopedic shoe until 12. At 16, she won bronze in the relay at Melbourne. At 18, still in high school, she became a mother. At 20, she was USA's fastest and brightest star.
When Cal Bruton arrived in Brisbane for that first Australian National Basketball League season in 1979, he found those early NBL courts were in modest gymnasiums, and the crowds were in their hundreds, not thousands.
After the first couple games, we lost like 2 out of the first 3, and of course, I got pulled in. Dave Atkins, who's the director of coaching, can you score? I said, well, that's not what the coaches actually do. He said, well, I'm telling you, you need to score. You know, if the team is going to be successful, you need to score. And if you can't score, we might have to find somebody that can. Oh, well, you mean tell me, do I go talk to the coach? He said, just score. First game I came out, dropped 29. And then I went and we played Wollongong, Illawarra at the time. So I dropped 29 that game. We beat them by a point. Then I came back and Doc said, I think he can score more. I was like, God. The next game I dropped 35 on Newcastle, then I went to 40, then I went to 44, and then I dropped 53 on Glenelg. And now everyone, the word is out. So everywhere I went now, the teams are coming after me.
Hard guy to guard because he had all that shake and bake stuff, and that was kind of new for Australia back in those, you know, you're talking 1979, and he came in with, you know, razzle dazzle, but could back it up.
As a player, the highlight was his 1985 title win with the Brisbane Bullets, and as coach, it was earning the NBL Coach of the Year honors in '82 with the Geelong Supercats before leading the Perth Wildcats to 2 finals and his first championship win in 1990. Bruton finished that first season the leading scorer in points per game, averaging over 33, and he went on to an Australian Hall of Fame career playing 250 games before coaching 5 teams.
Finally winning the championship, I felt consolidated, you know, that yes, I am a winner.
It's all over!
But the biggest statement of Bruton's career would come with international representation. To play for Australia at the 1986 World Championships, he had to renounce his U.S. citizenship for the green and gold, recognition of just how much his new homeland meant to him. Identified as a rare gem, Cal gravitated to the nickname the Black Pearl, and his arrival in Australia continued to aid the significant change in the White Australia policy, clearing the way for other black athletes and entertainers. The resulting influx of U.S. basketball lifted the standard of the game down under and contributed to the Australian Boomers winning its first ever Olympic medal in men's basketball at Tokyo 2020 and 2021. Since his retirement, Cal has blazed a trail in youth coaching through the Bruton Basketball Foundation and the AFL Sports Ready Initiative, an Indigenous placement program. His work culminated in 2021 with the highest honor an Australian citizen can receive, the Order of Australia. Bruton's legacy also has deep personal roots. Son Austin Bruton is a U.S. College Hall of Famer. Eldest son CJ represented Australia at the 2008 Olympics, is a 6-time NBL champion and MVP, a Hall of Famer, and the head coach of NBL's Adelaide 36ers. While his youngest sons, Brooklyn and Dante, are rubber stamping the Bruton legacy, landing shots in the NBL 1. And dunking and weaving for their home state respectively. Cal Bruton is proof that sometimes a bantamweight can thrive in the world of the heavyweights. You don't have to be tall to walk tall.